everyone, it's the Trinity Nicole and I am back with another video. So before I get started, I do want to quickly and publicly apologize because in one of my most recent videos, I used pictures of the preachers Michael Todd and Jamal Bryant in one of the thumbnails in my videos when I was talking about false prophets. And while I know for sure that those two individuals have preached and teach things that don't align with the word, I have no idea whether or not they are self-proclaimed prophets, and so therefore I should not have used their pictures in those thumbnails, and it was just misleading and I didn't feel right about it. So I wanted to apologize to not only those individuals but to my viewers, because I don't ever want to be above correction or be above being able to admit that I'm wrong. So I was wrong for that and I am sorry. But as you can tell by the title of this video, today I really want to talk about my testimony and to share how I started walking with the Lord, how my walk with the Lord began. I realized that I've been talking about a lot of Christian related things on my channel lately, but I haven't shared how I got to become a Christian essentially. So I want to share that story today, and I hope that it encourages somebody to really seek the Lord and go after him with all of their heart. So I think it's fitting to just start off with my childhood. I grew up in a very Christian church-going home, and so I had that knowledge about God. And to be honest, I've always felt like the presence of God in my life. I may not have always understood, but I always just felt God and just felt always knew that God was real. There was never a question in my mind about whether or not there was a God. And even just to further emphasize this point, I remember, and this is one of my core memories, I remember when I was living in the first home that I lived in as a child, I was walking up the stairs late at night and I just heard this super loud voice. It was loud, it was thunderous and commanding, but there wasn't anything scary about it. It was this super loud voice that was coming from my room, and I heard Trinity. That's what I heard the voice say. And it was so weird because I heard the voice coming from my room, but I also heard it in my mind. So it was so crazy. And that should have freaked me out. It should have scared me so much, but it didn't. I still went in my room and I was looking around. I was was that my dad? I was looking around and just wasn't scared at all. But I've never been able to forget that. So it's just things like that I've always just felt the presence of God. So yeah, I had a church-going childhood. I had a pretty normal and great childhood, no complaints. Grew up in a really big house. Had great loving parents who spoiled me and my sister like crazy. Things were really normal and really great up until I turned about 11 years old, because that was when my parents told me and my sister that they were getting a divorce. And this really affected me greatly and deeply at this time. And I think the main reason being I always grew up with the notion and knowledge and understanding that my parents were going to be together forever. They used to tell us that all the time, we're never going to get a divorce, we're going to be together forever. And then to have that assurance and then to have that ripped away from you, no, we're separating, it was really, really hard for me. It was hard for me to accept that my mom was going to be a single mom. And it was even though I was so young, I understood the ramifications and the image of that. My mom is going to have to do everything, most things by herself. She's not going to be able to afford everything. We're not going to be able to live the same way that we have lived. So I just really knew that everything was about to change. And knowing that I wasn't going to grow up in a house with my dad anymore, it was devastating. And so this really was the first point in time where I can pinpoint where I began to struggle with low self-esteem, with depression, and just a multitude of identity issues. And it was just the catapult for that was, my parents' separation. And during this time, I was in middle school and I was also struggling. I was getting bullied. I was having a whole lot of things going on. And at that time, this is a critical time in childhood and growing up and adolescence. You're trying to figure out who you are. You're feeling all these new emotions and these new things. And so I just had just so much going on at once. And I can also remember that this being the point in time where I began to really have a strong desire to be loved and to feel loved by the opposite sex. I mean, this really began for me at such a young age, and I remember just longing for companionship, longing for a boyfriend, for a relationship. And at that time, all of my friends, you know, were getting into relationships, were finding, you know, boyfriends and having their first kisses and all of these different things. And it just seemed like I was the only one in my friend group who not only who wasn't getting that attention, but was like looked at with disgust by boys. Like, I was not desired one bit. Like, the boys, they did not want me. I grew up in a predominantly white community, and so there weren't a whole lot of people that looked like me, and so that also contributed to just this low self-esteem, like feeling like, well, maybe if I was white, then, you know, I would be getting attention, or maybe if I was lighter skinned, like, you know, just so many things, or maybe if I didn't have, you know, curly hair, or just all of these different things that just really began to contribute to just feeling like I wasn't enough, feeling like I was unlovable. You know, my parents were separating, my dad was, you know, it really just made me feel like I wasn't capable of being loved. And so obviously when you feel that way, you want to be loved even the more. And so I really, throughout that whole entire period, throughout middle school, like really struggled with low self-esteem and depression. And the biggest thing about it was just, I felt like no one wanted me. I felt like there wasn't anybody in my life who would stay. And as mentioned, I was getting bullied about all kinds of things, my skin color, my hair, how skinny I was. And all of this contributed to a whirlwind of bad decisions to come. So all throughout middle school, you know, I was seriously longing for a relationship, for companionship, and as mentioned, it wasn't happening. And I don't even know, I mean, I know for a fact that, you know, it started with the desire for that started with my parents' separation, but I've always been just a hopeless romantic. I've always loved love. I've always loved romance books and romance movies, and I just really wanted to experience that love from a man. And so, you know, the hardest thing about it was seeing it happening for my friends and seeing them, you know, getting this attention and being the only one who just wasn't getting that attention. And so when I got to high school, I had one other friend who was like kind of in the same boat as me. Like, she wasn't getting any attention either. And so that kind of helped me to feel like, oh, like, you know, I'm not completely alone. But when we got to high school, she started getting attention and she started getting boyfriends. And so I was truly all alone in this. And so when I got my sophomore year in high school, I made it up in my mind that I am not going to be like the ugly friend anymore. I am not going to not get any attention. I'm going to get guys' attention. Like, I am going to be desirable. And so I started changing the way that I was wearing my hair. I started dressing differently, like dressing like very lewdly, like extenuating and showing off the body parts that I did not have. And really, it was nothing but the devil that was ministering to me, because I had no idea. I didn't know how to get a guy or to get a guy's attention. So I know that it was nothing but the devil that was using, you know, my low self-esteem and these desires to really get into my head and to minister to me and tell me what I needed to do. Like, it was nothing but the devil, because everything that I did led to me getting the attention that I thought that I wanted. And so it didn't take long. Started wearing my hair differently, started wearing makeup, started, you know, dressing completely differently. And I started getting the attention that I thought that I wanted. And I thought that these guys really wanted me. I thought that they really wanted me. I thought that they really liked me, but they really liked what they saw. You know, they saw a woman who clearly had low self-esteem. They saw a woman who, you know, was showing off body parts, and basically she's saying that she's, you know, she's ready to get in the bedroom. That's what they saw. And so when they would give me this attention, and when they would ask me and tell me to do different things, I would do them thinking that this must mean that this guy likes me. This is how I get a guy to like me. This is how I get a guy to stay. And so this really started me on a very dangerous path. I was so naive. I was so ignorant, really thinking that if I do these different things, this means that this guy likes me. Or if I keep doing these things, then this means that this guy will stay around. And so obviously I could not understand when I first started doing these things, performing, these sexual acts. I could not understand why do these guys not talk to me after? Why do they keep leaving? Why don't they ask me to hang out? Why is it that every time they ask to hang out, we're only doing these things? So I obviously didn't understand. And it didn't take long for me to, start becoming sexually active. I lost my virginity when I was 16, and I lost it in the worst way. I was like definitely a cliche in that area. You know how people always say, like, once you give a guy what he wants, he'll stop talking to you. I was that cliche. That's literally what happened to me. But I was so desensitized and just so wrapped up in this lifestyle that I was living that I didn't even realize what I had done. I didn't even realize what I had given up. And so this catapulted me on a path of reckless sexual decisions, of promiscuity, of just partying, drinking, smoking weed, all of it. I really began to indulge in that lifestyle. I had already given this thing up. I was already desensitized. I was already doing these things. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I might as well just go full throttle. And that's exactly what I did. And so I began to really build up a reputation in high school for being loose, for being the kind of woman who, you don't have to say too much to get her to do what you want her to do for you. Like, that was literally the kind of image that I had built for myself. And I fed into it. I thought it was cute. I thought it was just like, okay, well, I might as well just, really indulge in this. So I did. And so I kept giving myself to these guys who did not care about me, who did not really want me or like me. And I found myself in some very, very dangerous situations, multiple pregnancy scares, constantly in and out of Planned Parenthood, having to get tested for sexually transmitted diseases because I'm really out here. I'm really out here doing these things. And this is in high school. I was in high school. I should have been focusing on my studies or I was a track athlete. I should have been focusing on these things, but I was really just so wrapped up in the boys. And I was doing all of these things, sleeping with them, doing whatever they would want me to do, desperate for somebody to love me, for somebody to want me, for somebody to stay. And so obviously, because none of those things were happening, because the sex wasn't enough to keep them, because how well I performed in the bedroom wasn't enough to keep them, the depression and the low self-esteem that I felt in middle school took a dark and deep turn in high school as soon as I started doing these things. I found myself really not wanting to live anymore. I began to struggle with suicidal thoughts. I would look in the mirror and I just hated what I saw. I couldn't find anything that I loved, anything that I liked about myself. I truly hated the woman that I was becoming. And I didn't know what to do to stop it because now I'm in bondage. Now I'm in bondage to the things that I'm doing. I'm smoking weed 3 and 4 times a day, every day. I'm drinking, I'm partying, I'm sleeping around. And so now it's to the point where I feel like I have to do these things in order to function. So I didn't know what to do, how to get out. All I knew was that this is where I am, and I don't know what else to do. And more than that, I couldn't understand why I felt the way that I felt because I'm doing everything that everybody else is doing. All of my friends are doing these things. Everybody around me is doing these things. So why am I the only one who feels so dark and so empty and so alone and so lost? So I can honestly say that in these feelings, in the way that in the depression and the low self-esteem and the suicidal ideations, that I truly felt God pushing me to surrender and to talk to him and to pray. I would feel this all the time. And it was so prevalent that I would get angry. I would get angry at God. I would yell at God and tell God, there's nothing that you can do that's going to make me stop doing what I'm doing. There's nothing that you can do that's going to make me give up the lifestyle that I'm living. I really blamed God for the way that I felt. I really blamed God for the things that I was going through because it's just like, Lord, I see you giving my friends boyfriends. My friends are in these loving relationships and these things, and I'm the only thing I'm good enough for is what's in between my legs. So you know what, Lord, I don't want anything to do with you. Like, that's really how I felt. I just was so angry at God. And so when I would feel these prods, because I felt it all the time, like I said, the presence of God, I've always felt the presence of God. Whenever I would feel these things, I would literally talk to God and be like, nope, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that because you're the one who's letting me go through these things. You're the one who's doing this. I don't want anything to do with you. And I was so just desperate to turn that voice off, to turn that conviction, and to get that presence away from me, that I began to really get into witchcraft. And I didn't know anything about what I was doing. I really didn't. I was just so desperate to get God to be so mad at me and so angry at me that he would just leave me alone. So I would look up like how to do different like spells on Google, how to get like guys to like you and how to get them to want to be with you. Like I was literally looking up these things and I was doing it. I was lighting the candles and saying the chants and doing those different things. And I mean, seriously, like that's how much I wanted to get God out of my head. Like I swear, and it's so crazy because I didn't know what I was doing. I was so ignorant, so naive, and just really just being rebellious. But those were really the kinds of things that I began to do. And that's how much of a reprobate mind that I had. And this is how desperate I was to get somebody to love me and to want to be with me, that I was resorting to spell casting and chants and witchcraft. Like I was really looking into those things and really wanted to get into it. And thank God it never got like deep or something that I was doing frequently or all the time, but it was something that I tried for the purpose, for number one, because, you know, I was desperate to, you know, be loved, but also because I truly was trying to get God out of my head. I didn't want to hear that voice anymore. I truly wanted to just indulge and do what I wanted and just find a way to be happy in that without, you know, anything spiritual attached to it. So after probably a couple of years, majority of my high school experience, doing what I wanted to do, being completely reckless, smoking weed, drinking, sleeping around, I finally got to a point where my heart began to be softened toward God. I mean, I didn't know what else to do, because when I tell you guys that I truly wanted to die, I did not want to live anymore. The way that I felt, the darkness, the heaviness, it was so palpable that I thought, I knew that death would be better than living the way that I'm living right now. And so finally, my heart began to get softened towards God. And I remember it was New Year's 2018, and I was drinking with my friends. I was drunker than drunk. And I just began to think, I've done everything. I've done the weed, I've done the boys, I've done the parties, I've done everything, and I still feel the way that I feel. The one thing that I haven't tried is Jesus. And so that night I was like, you know what? I should probably just give this thing a try. I should just give it a try, because in my mind I was thinking, this is my last resort. Like if this doesn't work, I do not want to live anymore. I do not want to keep doing this. So I was like, you know what? I need to try Jesus. And the first thing that God began to convict me about was the sleeping around, was the fornication. And so I didn't know much of anything about what the Bible said, about what God was requiring of me, but that was what I knew. I knew that God was telling me that I need to stop doing what I'm doing with these guys. And so that's exactly what I did. I was 17, and that was the first commitment that I made to God. I said, God, I'm going to stop sleeping around. I'm going to wait until I get married to have sex. And so that was the first thing that I gave up for him. And thanks be to God, I have maintained that vow to this day. So again, like I didn't know anything else about what to do to serve God, to live for him. I just knew right then that, okay, I need to stop having sex. I knew that fornication was wrong, so I stopped doing it. And I really began, that's when my spiritual journey began. That New Year's 2018, or 2017 actually. It was 2017. No, it was 2018. One or the other, okay? All I know is I was 17 years old, and that was where my spiritual journey began. And so I began to pray and read the word and really try to establish a relationship with Jesus. And I was still at the time, still smoking weed, still drinking, still cursing. Like there was really nothing that had changed like inwardly, but God was working on me. God was definitely leading and guiding my life, and he was definitely softening my heart towards him. And he was definitely putting me on a trajectory to surrender everything. And so when I got to college, I began to feel the same conviction that I felt about fornication when I was in high school. I began to feel that same conviction about everything else that I was doing when I got to college. The weed, the drinking, the partying, the boys, all of it. And I got to a point where I was in college, I'm doing everything. Like, now I don't have any parents. I don't have to sneak out anymore. I don't have to lie anymore. Like, I can just do what I want to do. And I was doing what I wanted to do. I was smoking, I was drinking, I was doing all of these different things, but I found that I wasn't finding the same enjoyment anymore. I'm at the parties and I'm like, I don't even really want to be here. Even just planning to go to a party, I'm like, bro, I really don't even want to go. Like, God really began to change my desires. Like, I don't want to do these things anymore. There wasn't this urgency for it. There wasn't just this burning desire anymore for these things. And I just began to feel so weary and tired of that lifestyle. And I knew that it was God. I knew that not only was God convicting me about it, but God was changing my desires. And this is how I knew. This is how I knew for certain that God was convicting me, okay? That God was telling me that I need to stop doing what I was doing. Because when I got to Prairie View, I met this guy, super attractive guy. I mean, like, super attractive. And he was like really into me. He really liked me. And I mean, I knew that he really liked me because I remember we were at like, I went to one of his like flag football games, whatever. And there was this super gorgeous girl. Like, she was stunning, okay? Super gorgeous girl who was like all over him and talking to him. And I'm over here thinking, well, he's probably gonna go after that girl. But when the game was over, he like walked away from her, came over to me and was like, you ready to go? So I was like, that's how I knew that he really liked me, okay? And he was so attractive. And this was literally everything that I had been wanting. Like, finally found a guy who wanted a relationship, who wanted to be with me. And this is something that I had been wanting like literally all throughout high school, right? And I'm finally finding it. And I couldn't figure out why it wasn't like doing anything for me. I couldn't figure out like why don't I want to go full throttle with this? Why is there still something about this that doesn't feel right? And I remember one night we were laying together in his bed. We weren't doing anything. We were just laying together, just cuddling, watching a movie. And I just remember feeling so uncomfortable. I remember just feeling like, just having so many, just feeling the ick, okay? And I had no reason to feel that way, right? Because he was doing everything right. He was so attractive. He was this, that, and the third. He was like a popular guy. I could not figure out why I felt the way that I felt. And so I was so frustrated. It's like, bro, I could have a relationship right now. I could have everything that I've been wanting. Like, I could be that girl. But I felt so uncomfortable that it ended up making up some sort of lie about why I needed to leave. And so I ended up leaving and walking home to my dorm alone. And I was just talking to God. I was like, God, like, what are you saying to me? Like, why do I feel this way? Why don't I want to go after this? And I knew that God was telling me, you know, that he wanted me to surrender, that he wanted me to give this up, that he wanted me to give up the desire, or that he wanted me to give up the drugs, the alcohol, the parties, and even the boys. Like, right now, it wasn't the time for me to have a boyfriend, to date, to do those different things. I knew that God wanted me to just walk with him and just get to know him. And it was like God was just completely changing everything about me in that first semester of my freshman year in college. When I got to college, my, relationship with God began to get more intense. I'm praying more. I'm spending more time with him. I'm looking for organizations on campus to join, like Christian organizations. I joined an organization called Pinky Promise. I was going to the church on campus. Like, I was really, really looking and seeking for God. And so after the first semester of my freshman year in college, that was when things took a turn. I stopped drinking. I stopped partying. I was like, I put away so many things. And I remember the fornication was one of the biggest bondages that I had. And on top of that was smoking weed. Like, smoking weed was my Achilles heel. I was smoking weed 3 and 4 times a day, every day. And I was like, I had the pipes. I was a stoner. That's what they say, right? I was a stoner. And so that was one of the things that I knew was going to be really difficult for me to give up. But I remember the last time that I smoked weed, it was January of 2019. And I was with one of my friends and we were smoking together. And when we finished, I was like, this is the last time that I'm doing this. This is the last time that I'm smoking weed. I need to get it together. I need to go after God with my whole heart. And that was the last time that I smoked weed. God really began to do a work in me. And that year, 2019, was the year that I gave up everything for God. I surrendered everything for him. And I really began to, the love that I had been looking for in men, in the boys, I found in Jesus Christ. That gap, that hole in my heart that I had been seeking so desperately to fill with the weed and with the parties and with the alcohol and with the friends. God filled that gap in my heart. The depression and the loneliness and the darkness began to lift up off of me, and I finally felt like I was alive again. I felt like I wasn't just this dead girl walking. I really felt like God. I really felt like I was living the way that God had intended humans to live. And it all began when I began to surrender everything to him, when I said, you know what, God, I'm done doing these things. I'm done living this life. I want to live for you. And God honored that. And he began to turn everything around for me. He began to really put me on a path that was going to lead to life. Because the path that I was on, the life that I was living would have led me down a really, really dark road of, having children out of wedlock and maybe even getting incurable STDs, like all of these different things I knew. And that was one of the things that convicted me when I got to college. It's like, I know that if I keep doing the things that I'm doing, I am going to end up making a irreversible mistake. And I knew that God was telling me that. I knew that God was telling me, like, I'm not going to keep putting my hand of protection on you. You've got to surrender. You have got to turn around. And it just put an urgency in my heart. And so that's exactly what I did. And so from 2019 until now, I have been walking with God. I have gone through so much in my salvation. There are so many other testimonies that I have, even being saved and giving my life to God. I have learned and known God to be a provider, a healer, a father, a friend, a confidant, a counselor. Like, I have truly gotten to know God, and I can honestly say from the bottom of my heart that he is my best friend. I know what it means to walk alone. I know what it looks like to look up and realize that all you have is God. And I am thankful that he got a hold of me when he did. And that's not to say that it's been smooth sailing, that I haven't made mistakes, that I haven't had to repent, because I absolutely have. But I wouldn't want to live any other life. He has been my everything, and he is good, he is faithful, he is true. And so I really hope that this encourages somebody who may have found themselves in this story, like found themselves, well, I have low self-esteem. I am struggling with depression and suicidal thoughts. I hope that the person who is feeling like this can take something away from this testimony and will really seek God and surrender, because he is everything. He's everything that you need. And he can bring you joy. He can bring you peace. He can heal your heart from any ache, any pain. And he's done just that for me. I'm so grateful. I'm so thankful. I wouldn't change anything about my story and about anything that I've gone through, because it's led me here. And it's been 6 years. It's been 6 years that I've been living this life, and it still brings me to tears to think about what God did for me then and what he continues to do for me. So yeah, that is my testimony of how God saved me from fornication, from drugs, from alcohol, from partying, and really set me on a path of light and of love, and walking with Jesus. It has been a journey, and I'm looking forward to the rest of my life. And I hope with all of my heart that when all is said and done, that I will be able to say the same thing that Paul said, that I fought the good fight, I've kept the faith, and now I have waiting for me a crown of glory. And I hope that we can all say that. So that is my testimony, and I will see you guys next time.